If you think your child is using drugs, they are. They're going to lie and tell you whatever you want to hear. They're going to be so good at it. You are going to fight, cry, scream, pray, and then if you're lucky, if you're really, really lucky, you will have a recovering addict. He was out with friends and apparently fell into a hole or something and twisted his knee and tore 3 of his ligaments. I think that is really where his addiction really started, was with the pain prescriptions that they had given him. My children said that now when they go out to a bar, it's just a given that somebody's going to offer you to sell you a prescription drug. As Brian explained to me, you take it to have fun that night and to party. And then the next day, you're hungover and someone's like, oh, this will help that. Then before you know it, you're taking 10 to 15 pills a day. And then that just gets too expensive and your friendly local drug dealer says, hey, I've got something else that's just as good and it's a lot cheaper. And that's where they make the switch. I mean, if you had told me 10 years ago that my kid would be sticking a needle in his arm, I would have told you you're crazy. That's never going to happen. We got a phone call from my sister-in-law and she said, we need to tell you that Brian's using heroin. And I literally knew for some reason it might be the beginning of the end. What do we do now? What do we do now? There's no instructions. There's no yes or no to dealing with an addict. There's no right or wrong at all. I remember thinking to myself, okay, keep an eye on him. Just keep an eye on him. Don't let him out of your sight. My girlfriend and I, we planned on literally kidnapping him, and I'm not the only parent. I've talked to a lot of other parents. They want to do the same thing. And we had this whole thing planned. We were going to do this. But even if you did and you chained him up and he was sober for months, what's going to happen after you let him go? Are you going to keep him chained up forever? We actually put a tracking device on his car to see where he was going to get his heroin. And I sat there watching these teenagers pulling in and out of this driveway. And they told me to get out, and I argue, I'm not breaking the law. I'm sitting here on the street. I'm not on your property. You can't tell me to leave. And he threatened to call the police. And I offered him my phone. I said, here, do me a favor, call the police. I'm begging you, go ahead. And he just flipped me off and left. This is going to be an ongoing struggle for you as a parent for years. There's no heroin addict that I have heard of that has made a recovery or is a recovering addict that hasn't gone through rehab at least 3 times. There's a lot of halfway houses in Florida that are not really halfway houses. They have a website. They promise you that they're going to monitor your child 24 hours a day, and they're going to make them go to their AA meetings and their NA meetings, and they're going to make them have a sponsor. But they're a flop house. They're not really a halfway or a sober living home. They are making money off of the addiction of your child. Would I recommend that their child go to Florida? No, I wouldn't. I absolutely would not. My husband and I were on our way home from the beach. We had taken the dog down. It was late in the afternoon, and our daughter had called to tell us that Brian had overdosed and that he was in the hospital and that she didn't know anything else. We kept calling and no one would tell us anything. My daughter had gone to the hospital. They wouldn't tell her anything. She snuck in somehow. And someone saw her, and one of the detectives, like I said, he took pity on her and pulled her aside and told her that Brian had died. She had then a very good friend of ours that was with her call us and, of course, tell us. You know what I did? I'll never forget. I screamed at him to tell them that he has insurance and that they probably just aren't doing whatever they need to do because they don't know he has insurance. I seriously thought because he was an addict and died as an addict that they thought he was just like some homeless person, so they weren't going to do whatever they had to do. I remember both of us just falling to our knees and screaming. You would have, I think if you were outside my house, that you would have thought someone was being murdered in here. You know, towards the end, it wasn't Brian anymore. When he was using, it was, you have a different person. It's not your son, it's not your daughter. It's this monster. I was sick the year before Brian died. I was very sick for 6 months. I was bedridden and was in the hospital. And he walked into my room in the beginning, and I looked at him, and I knew he was clean. I knew he was sober. And I looked at him and I said, "Oh, hey, how are you doing? It's so nice to see you back. Are you going to stay for a while?" And he just grinned. He looked at me and grinned. He's like, "I know, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry." He's like, "Yeah, I'm going to be here for you." And he was. Right after Brian died, our family priest called me and he said, "Penny, the worst thing parents think that could happen to them is that they lose their child." And I was thinking, yes, that's true. And he said, "But it's not. It's not the worst thing. The worst thing is not to have them at all." And I'm truly blessed that I had such a bright, beautiful, shining star in my life. I really am. He was something else.